Okay, today's video is going to be a tool review, or I guess we could probably call it more of an unboxing, because I just got it in the mail and I haven't been more excited about a new tool in a very long time. Now, quick backstory. A few months ago, there was a convergence of occurrences. I produced yet another video over one of my most used and favorite tools, recommending it to people as one of the most underrated hand tools out there. I've done other videos on it for Christmas gift ideas. I've just done a lot, and that is my spear-pointed marking knife. At the same time, I happened to get a surprise order from a toy store for reordering stuff that I wasn't expecting. It's an extra order for me. And then I saw a post from Nick. I think it's Dombrowski. I forget. I met him probably 15 years ago at a woodworking class at Roy Underhill School, where I made this hand plane. He and his dad took the class with me, and since then I've kind of followed him along over the years. Nick is kind of a unique guy in the boutique tool industry, in that when I first met him, he was in his parents' basements making wooden screws for wooden leg vices and stuff like that. And he had decided he had just gotten his first CNC. Before then, he was doing it with blades and stuff like that. And I just watched him over the years. It's a very small company, but if you're looking for leg vices or bench vices and stuff like that, if you want a metal one, you're going to Benchcraft it. But if you're wanting a high quality wood one, he's kind of got that market all to himself because of the quality that he's been putting out there for so long. Well, recently he's kind of expanded into some metal things. He's starting to make blades for hand planes, and he came out with a marking knife. And I saw that on one of his posts, and I kind of looked at it, and I sat there and with the convergence of, I've been using this exact marking knife, for over a dozen years. Y'all have seen me use it in videos. I'm a very big fan of heavy, thick spear point marking knives. And I've talked about in the past, I've bought thin ones. I just don't really like them that much. And in other videos, I've talked about all the marking knives I started out with, from these little shop-made ones to Japanese ones, all that kind of stuff. And none of them have even come close to competing with this cheap. I want to say it was $12 when I bought it, because I seem to remember when I bought these inexpensive plastic ones, they were the same price. And I was surprised that the price had gone up so much. So I've been using this thing forever, loving it, abusing it. It's touched pretty much every hand tool woodworking project I've ever done. Now, I know all things are kind of relative, but when I look at my tool collection, which this is it for my hand tool woodworking, I have some very nice tools I've collected over 20 years or stuff like that. But not too many are ultra premium. And the ones that I have gotten that are premium, I've bought used and fixed back up. So I was sitting here thinking, I have really nice chisels. I have really nice saws. But what's the one tool I have that I use all the time? That marking knife. So if there's ever a tool to splurge on, to get something that is truly luxurious, doesn't it make sense that'd be the one tool that's in your hand all the time? And I saw that post from Nick that he was coming out with one. So all that convergence, I ordered me a ultra luxurious marking knife, and I just got it in the mail and I undid it. So just want to make a video on it because this thing's cool. Now, as a quick reference, here's my current marking knife. You can see I abuse it all the time. I resharpen it on the grinder, stones, that kind of stuff. But I don't really keep it ultra sharp because it's a marking knife. I also use it for opening boxes and everything. It's just my general go-to kind of sharp edge in the shop. Nothing pretty. Some of the things I've never really liked about it is this kind of glossy finish on it, but after a dozen years or so, it's still glossy. I could have always taken that off, but it's my go-to sharp edge in the shop. I use it everywhere. Now, Nick's, came in a very nice box. You can see he's really famous for making these screws and stuff like that. And he's just now getting into making plane blades and that kind of stuff. And here's that premium marking knife he made. Comes with a nice little leather thing. I'm not sure what I would ever use this for other than if I was just kind of leaving it loose in my toolbox, which I don't. I kind of like the fact that he put a hole in it. He marks it Nitro V. It's a high-end powdered metal, but really for a marking knife, I think it's overkill. It's nice to know you have it, but simple 01 tool steel would have been just fine in my mind. But when I first picked it up, the strangest thing happened. This feels soft. And it was something I was concerned about when I first got it, because whenever I was doing, opening up my woodworking school, one of the things I was going to do was make and sell marking knives. And I bought these from Hawk Tools as a blank for me to make a handle on, but I never really liked them. But one of the things I really noticed, man, I've had these for so long, it's stuck in the bag, is that when I first picked it out and I held it, I didn't like how these edges felt. It felt kind of, this feels hard. It feels harsh. It didn't seem like it'd be something I would hold in my hand all the time. And, I was going to be making a little wooden handle, but in the end, I just didn't like the size of the tip and stuff like that, so I just set these aside and never used them. I'll probably someday make a turning tool out of all these, but I didn't want to make and sell something that I wouldn't use myself. So these kind of got put in the back burner. But that's what the feeling I had of holding that one. This one, the way he's beveled the edges, and I don't know what he's done with this. I think it's tumbled or something like that. Somehow he kept the back tip still really flat for sharpening purposes. But this just has a feel to it very much like the softness of wood. Wood's hard, but when you hold it, it just kind of feels different than just raw metal. Even though this is raw metal, it has a really cool feel to it, and I don't know how to explain that too much. He has beveled all the edges, and I'll come back to that in a little bit, and he's tapered it in the middle. Can you see that? This is somewhat tapered. If I get a straight edge, you can kind of see light comes through it like that. Now, he does make them just plain, and these are kind of special order, so I imagine he gets, a couple dozen of them, and then he'll run a batch through, because it did take a month or so for this to come in. But right before he makes them, he contacts everybody and asks what they want to do right here. I was just going to make it plain on the edge, but he mentioned something. He can engrave these angles right here so that this angle matches that angle, the angle right there. So if you use a sharpening jig, you can put it in the sharpening jig to create that angle because it's all lined up perfectly. So I told him to go ahead, if he could, just do it on one side, because he normally does it on both sides, because that, in my mind, that told me that I could feel this edge. So whenever I pick up the blade, I will always know whether the bevel is on this side or this side just by a quick feel, even though your eyes could tell you that. But here's something that until I held it in my hand, I didn't realize the benefit of a flat blade versus this right here. If you are a hand tool woodworker, a lot of times the material you're using are not going to be uniform. A lot of times you'll want a thin board for the sides and a thicker board for the front or the back so that you can, dovetail in stuff. So a trick that y'all have seen me do all the time is I will take my knife and I will put my finger on it and I'll put that bevel down right like that. What that does is it creates this as a ramp right there that kind of pushes the blade down. I then will actually just take measurements directly off a piece. Run a line, I've now got my baseline for a dovetail. That easy. There's not really any way I can mess up the measurements. It will be perfect every time that way. It's relative measurement. But now, because I have all the surface area, and I'm assuming because he did tumble this, it's just got some grip. It doesn't really want to move that much. So now all I have to do is kind of hold that right there, and very easily it'll mark that knife line, that baseline for me. it's just a lot simpler just to lay this down than to do that. And that is a luxury element to making life easier. It isn't hard to do it this way, but if you don't have to. But here's something, all of a sudden, an opportunity that opens up. I like to do proud joints a lot of times. An example being this pet urn I made in one of the very first videos I put on my YouTube channel about the green and green box joints. They're a little bit proud, and the kind of stuff I make typically is box size. Well, guess what? This just happens to be the same thickness as that. Even over all these years, that is kind of my preferred distance. So now if I ever want to make a box joint, a raised box joint, elevated box joint, something green and green style, all I have to do, turn the knife over. Because now it has that perfect distance from the edge. So for all y'all that just like to go a little bit proud and then plane back to get the perfect size, there you go. Plus another advantage of doing this a little bit proud is if you do like to plane back, if you ever have any gaps on the end, well, those fibers will clip out a little bit and fill the gaps. You didn't hear that trick from me. But that really is something I do enough in my own personal woodworking that right there, it will add a lot more consistency across everything if I'm just referencing the same tool all the time. So, I mean, as a luxury tool, this is, I'm really happy with this, and I think it's kind of cool. It's not perfect. Now, I mentioned earlier that on this tool right here, I use these two corners quite a bit. And what I use them for is like if I'm cleaning out the schmutz at the bottom of a joint, a lot of times you can't get the tip inside because, you know, by angling it, it just doesn't fit anymore. But that's the width of a lot of my dovetails. So to get at the bottom, I can just use that corner to kind of clean out the inside schmutz of the edges. And I do that for both sides. That's one of the benefits of this knife, this kind of spear point edge, other than the fact that you can use one tool for both sides of a joint. These bevels that he put on the blade, which really enhance the feel of it, I do notice that if you notice, he took the bevel all the way to the edge, so that kind of rounded that over a little bit. So while I haven't used this tool yet, the actual edge itself is not on the bottom, but it's kind of raised up a tad bit. And I think that might affect doing those joints, but that's part of a joint that's never seen, so maybe I'm over-analyzing it. But in that, this is something that I emailed him when I first saw this to mention it. I would really like to see this bevel right here maybe stop right there so that this whole edge is flat for future sharpening aspects and to get that as a point. The other thing is, I kind of think I would like just a little more length, maybe an inch and a half, 2 inches would be even nicer, for the simple reason when I hold it, the way I normally hold a knife, you know, I'm either going to be doing it like this. Notice it's in my palm and not up here. I think that would feel a little bit better. And when I hold it as a pencil, you know, it's just a little bit would be more comfortable. Well, wait a second. Okay. That might just be because I'm so used to this size. That just came to my mind. So maybe it's just something I need to get used to. A little more length would be nice, but I think I just realized that it's just what I'm used to. So there we go. I got myself a new luxury tool, and I just want to show off a little bit. And you know, if you're in this craft for a long time, little luxuries are kind of nice. Something that for no other reason you're kind of proud of it. Yes, it's got exotic metals and stuff like that, but this one has some functionalities I just showed you above and beyond what I see out there. But can I say that those functionalities justify the price? Probably not. But it's just kind of nice having a luxury item. I mean, I'm never going to be able to afford a Lamborghini or Ferrari, but I can spend an extra 20, 30 bucks over the competition to get something truly extraordinary in the class. So I guess this one can go back in my backup shelf. And I now have a place, a new premium item that you'll be seeing me use for the next 20 years on videos. Hope you enjoyed this, learned a few things or things like that. But remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create. I didn't really make anything. I just spent a little extra money I surprised myself with. Y'all be safe and have fun.